Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about something I've been working on for the last couple of months, and that is Aerogel. Aerogel is an application framework. The last couple of apps I've been always making them from scratch, but at some point I've gotten into some common patterns I'm applying to all of them. So the idea of this framework is to use all of the patterns I use in my apps so that I can make apps faster, and hopefully it's also useful for other people who are getting started with Solid and this kind of applications. So there is not a lot of documentation yet, but something you can do is create a new project and see how it works. And this is what we are going to do today. So using this script, you can create a new app. We'll call it create hello Aerogel, and this will create the folder and install all the dependencies. I will not make you wait through all of this. We are done. Let's open the folder to see what we have in there. Out of the box, Aerogel comes with a couple of things installed. By default, it uses the Tailwind CSS, and it also has some common extensions like internationalization and so on and so forth. In our case, we will not use many of those because we just want to see a couple of things. So let's start the application like this. And this is the initial screen that you get with the basic scaffolding. For today, I thought we would make a tasks manager, or a list of tasks basically, because I think it's a good way to show the basic ideas of the framework and what it can do. So we will get started by writing a list of tasks. So we will create an array with the values here. We will give each task an ID and a name. And we can show these tasks in our UI with a list, for example. Now this should be the key for the loop, and inside we would show the name. Yeah, this is the basic stuff we want to do. I will add a couple of Tailwind classes to make this look a bit better. Okay, that's a bit better. One of the things Aerogel can help you with is making forms. There are some built-in components in the framework. They all start by AG, and one of them, for example, is AG form. You can create this component to write your forms, and no need to import it actually. And you can define the form using the useForm method function. And you will pass the inputs that the form will have. In this case, we only want one, which will be, we will call it draft, and it will be a required string. So you tell it the form instance here, that way it can make some inferences inside, as you will see. Another component is the AG input, and just by telling it the name, it will already pick up all the information we have defined here. In this example, we are only saying that it's a text input and that it's required, but you will also be able to add more things here. And we also want a button to submit the form. Yeah, that's also quite rough, so let me clean it up a bit. Okay, that's a bit better. And let's say we want to, just to see that this is working, we want to show the information on the screen. So when you submit a form, you have this event, and you can use one of the services built in with Aerogel, for example, the UI service. We'll use it to show an alert with the name of the task. Alert name, here we pass the name of the task. You can also notice that it has TypeScript inference for this type of things. It says it's a string. If it were a number, it would be a number, etc. So let's see if that works. Sometimes you have to reload for these things. Test. And yeah, it's working properly. However, the field is not being emptied, and actually even if you empty it, you will see it giving you an error that is required. That is because the form has been submitted, so the validation is being applied. Something you can do whenever you want to reset the form is to call this method form.reset. Now every time you do something, well, you submit the form will be reset and everything will be like this again, which is what we want in this case. So yeah, that's pretty neat. The last thing we need is to actually add the task in the list rather than show it on the screen. So we will push it into the array. The ID, we can just increase the number of tasks that we have, and we will use the value of the input like this. So now it should work, and it does. However, this is nice, but it only works in memory, right? As soon as you refresh, you will lose the new tasks that you added. This is where we start adding some more things from Aerogel. In this case, we will use a library called SoCai. I have also written this library, and the basic idea is that it applies the active record design pattern for the front end. So in this case, you have a bit more documentation, so you can read it if you want to learn more. The first thing you need to do when you want to use SoCai is define a model for the data you are going to store. In this case, Aerogel also comes with a CLI to help you doing this type of stuff. In this case, we want to create a new model, so we will say generate model. The name of the model is task, and the fields we want is name, which is a string, and it is required. This will create a new file with all the information that the model needs. So now, instead of just having a plain array here, we will use the model collection helper, and we will use it with our task model. Models task. Okay, now this is complaining because the ID is a string with SoCai, but actually we don't even need to specify an ID because it will be created automatically if we use the methods in SoCai. In this case, create. And just like that, now we have persistence. Let's see if that works as it should, and yes, it does. By default is configuring IndexedDB, but this can also be configured if you want to change it. So yeah, that's pretty neat, but we still need one more thing to do. Now this is persistent, but it's only persistent in this browser. If I use a different browser or a different device, we will still lose the data, right? So it would be nice if we have it safe in the cloud. For this, I will use something called the Solid protocol. You can learn more about this in this website. And the basic idea is that when you use the application, you choose where the data is stored. So you log in into what is called your own pod, your own Solid pod, right? So let's see. To do that, we need to install the Solid plugin in Aerogel. You can do that using this command, install Solid. Now we will use the magic of editing once again. And with that, we have Solid in our project now. One of the things that come with the Solid plugin is some more components. For example, the Solid status component. You can use this component to see the status of your Solid session, and also to log in and log out. In this case, we are not logged in or anything, so we are seeing a login form. Before we actually log in and start playing with that, let's do a couple of things. First, we want to extract this from here, because we only want to see the list of tasks once the user has logged in, because otherwise we wouldn't have access to the pod. So we can also use this command to generate components. We'll call it task list. You can of course also do this by hand, but I find it quite useful. Yeah, actually it should have been called tasks list. So let's change it now. Okay. and we will paste what we had in the other page. Also, we have to move all the logic because none of that is relevant for the other component. Okay, and now we can import it like this. Yeah. However, to be honest, we only want to show it, as I said, when you are logged in. So we can use the solid service in this case to guard it against that. So only show this component if you have been logged in. Okay, now we have this as we wanted it. So let's give it a try and log into our solid pod. In this case, I will log in into a local pod I have running, but you can use an online pod as well if you want it. Let's see. Let's log in. Okay, and we are logged in now. And however, yeah, we are logged in, but we are still seeing the same data. Why is this happening? This is because the task list is still using the model we defined at the beginning, and this model doesn't know anything about solid. So we need to configure this so that the model is actually stored in the solid pod rather than the default IndexedDB as I mentioned at the beginning, right? So let's see how to do that. First of all, we need to declare the model as a solid model because it needs a bit more information than a plain model. Define solid model schema. So by default it also seems to work, but there is one that is something missing that is quite important, which is the RDF class. In this case, we will use schema action, which uses schema.org ontology. The name, we don't have to specify anything because by default it uses the same ontology as the class, so it will use schema name, which in this case is the thing that we want. So that's it for the model. And now the last thing we need to do is to actually link the model with the pod. To do that, we're going to create a new service, also using this command, service, and we will call it tasks, for example. This will generate the service file and register it so that it's executed at the beginning when the app boots. And we can override the boot method that is executed when the application is started. So basically in every refresh of the browser. We have to call the super functionality in case so that we don't miss anything. And here is where we would hook our task model with our solid pod. We don't always want to do it. We only want to have it when the user is actually logged in because we don't have the information otherwise. So we can listen to events in Aerogel, and in this case we want to listen to the login event. And we will use the session information to achieve our goals, right? In this case, what we want to do is to create or use a new container, which is the concept that Solid uses to store information rather than tables. It uses containers. So let's look into that. We define the name of the container. We'll call it tasks. You also need to define a URL. This is something that you would confirm with the user normally because they can have the information stored differently in their own pod. But in this example, just to go quickly, we are going to hard code the name of the container, which is not something you should do in a real app. So we are going to use the name to generate the container name, and the root URL for the container should be the one from this user in this pod. And you can get this information from the session as well. It's a list of URLs, so we will get the first one, and you should always have one, but in case it doesn't, let's just have this to have a fallback, so that TypeScript works at least. And now let's get the container. So we can use the solid service for that, and we shall pass the name of the container, also the URL, and this is enough by itself, but we will also do a couple of things. For example, we'll say to register it for this task, for this model. This will use the type index to register this so that other applications are aware that this exists as well. And we will also indicate that we want to reuse it in case that it already exists, because it's also possible that other applications created it without using the type index or something else. As I mentioned, you shouldn't do this normally. On a real application, if this happens, you should ask users for confirmation, right? So now that we have the container, finally we can configure our model to use this container. You can do it setting the collection to the container URL and also using the engine that is provided by the session authenticator. So you can do it like this. And basically that's all you need. Now we should be able to use Solid in our application. Let's see if it works as we expect. So we reconnect, we see the list of tasks, and let's create one. So it seems to be working. If you reload and you reconnect, everything looks fine. But just to be completely sure that this is what we think it is, let's look at the network. So if we create another task, we can see that it has done the network requests and it's actually communicating with the pod and creating the new information, the new documents. So yeah, we can confirm that it's working as we thought it was. And basically that's it for this demo today. I could get into a couple more things, but I think that's enough to get some feedback. And also, if you want to learn more about it, you can visit this playground where there are different pages with similar functionality. In particular, this one called Solid is very similar to what we have done right now. And to show you something interesting, if you log in with the same pod I was using for the demo, and let's use the same account as well, you will see that we have the same data that we created here. That is one of the points of Solid, that different applications can work on top of the same data. So yeah, that's really nice. And for example, in our application, we didn't implement functionality to delete tasks or mark them as done or anything. But for example, in this other application, if we delete something, then in our application, when we reload, we will see that it's using the same data set. So the deleted tasks will have been deleted as well. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you like it, and I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback and seeing what you think. Thank you.